Hello,
Okay.
Alan.
I've got it. Good morning, Miss Letty. Or afternoon, should I say? Afternoon. It's gone midday.
All right. So after midday, we say good afternoon.
That's right. That's the crucial
And
time.
then maybe after 4 or nearly 5 o'clock, we say good evening when
Evening.
it's
That's correct.
starting to
Yes.
get dark, no?
Yes. That's right.
Right. I'm going to cultivate you again, Alan, with a book.
Oh, I'm always open to anything that you can put my way.
Right. So I haven't read this one, Alan, even though I am a reader. I have
Right.
read another one by this author, but I thought we would do this one today. So it's
Right.
new for both of us. So can you see what it is called?
Well, my cousin Rachel.
Right. It won't
Right.
ring a bell because you don't read novels.
Yeah. Daphne du Maurier. That name comes up a lot in Cornwall because she wrote a lot of I don't know, poem stories down in Cornwall. I understand. Yeah, very
Right.
famous woman.
So at least you know something about reading and the authors.
Well,
So as you said, I know nothing about her, but I have read a few of her books. And
yes,
you said she's connected to Cornwall. And
yes,
Cornwall,
absolutely.
for our visitors, is in the south of England at the bottom.
That's right. The southern part of England,
I
UK.
think it
Yeah.
could be called one of the most famous tourist places in
Ab-
England.
yes, absolutely. It is. That's where you get the best climate. If any, warm weather's going, it's down in the south. Yeah.
I have never visited Cornwall, Alan, never.
Well,
My
I lived there
family have.
45 years, so I know it a little bit now.
So I believe it's very beautiful, but it could be expensive because it's so popular. So people
Yeah,
go there for, I think they go surfing, they
yeah,
go sailing, and it's just a place to go. And people love it.
yes.
So could you read about the author, please?
Okay. During the first weeks of 1951, Daphne du Maurier spent her days in the writing hut in the grounds of her beloved home at Menabilly, and using the notes that she had been working on during the previous months, she began to write her 10th novel. This was to be her last truly historical novel based in Cornwall, although two other Cornish novels would follow much later. The story that she wove this time was a study in jealousy and suspense with a gothic quality. My cousin Rachel was set in the 19th century and was the third of Daphne's novels to have Menabilly as its main location. For the second time, Daphne used a male narrator, Philip Ashley, a young and inexperienced man whose judgment could be unreliable. Interestingly, Daphne took the name and physical attributes of the title character from a portrait that she had seen. The portrait was of a woman called Rachel Carew. My Cousin Rachel was published in Britain in July 1951. It was an immediate success with Daphne du Maurier's fans and received excellent reviews from the critics.
Thank you. So the name of the author is Daphne du Maurier. That's
Yes,
how you say it, no? So for our viewers, it could be a difficult word, Daphne du Maurier.
yes.
And the name of the place where she wrote the book, let me see, what's it called?
Menabilly, I've been there.
Menabilly.
Yes,
Menabilly. That's how we say it, just in case it comes up in the story
yes,
and we need to know how to pronounce it. Our viewers shouldn't worry so much about personal names of people or places because they are quite complicated, no, to know how to say.
yes.
Right. So if you would like to start, and then I will do the next one. Off we go.
You'd like to read this one?
Yes, please.
Okay. My father and mother died before I was 2 years old. I cannot remember them. My father died first, fighting in the war against the French in 1815. My mother died a few months afterwards. My cousin Ambrose, who was 20 years older than me, became my guardian. He looked after me as if I were his son. From the beginning, I loved Ambrose more than anyone else in the world. Ambrose Ashley was a rich, unmarried man. He lived in a beautiful old house in the west of England. The house was near the sea, and there was farmland all around it. The house, the land, and the farms all around it had all belonged to the Ashley family for many years. The house was full of pictures, books, and many beautiful things. Ambrose was a gentleman of leisure. He was not a businessman, but he took good care of all the people who worked on his land. He knew them all by name. Everyone on the estate loved Ambrose as much as I did. Ambrose was a shy man with many unusual ideas. He looked after me himself, and would not have a woman in the house to help him. But he was friendly with the people who lived in the other big houses in the district. Some of his neighbours did not understand Ambrose, but they all liked him.
Right. So we have to imagine when the story is set. So it's set in 1815. So we have to think that there were quite a few men of leisure, which means that they lived off the fortune, the money they had, no? And it was given down through generations.
Mm.
So in 1815, there were quite a few people, men who had money and big houses, and they were nobles, and a lot of people worked for them. Another thing which struck me was I think people died younger then. So it wasn't unusual for people to lose their parents at an early age.
Mm.
So if we look back in history, we can see that people didn't live that long many years ago. For example, my father's father, I think he died when he was 35.
Wow.
I think as in certain generations, it was more normal for people to die younger because of the hardship, maybe because of malnutrition and different
Mm.
things. So she hasn't got any parents, and her uncle looks after her. As I grew older, Ambrose and I became more like brothers. We were both tall, shy, with long arms and legs and big feet. We both had thick, curly hair, although Ambrose's hair was darker than mine. So they became very close. We enjoyed doing the same things. We often rode our horses through the beautiful woods and fields near the house. When the weather was good, we sailed our boat on the sea, fished or swam. So they have a great life because they have money, no?
Mm.
There were no female servants in Ashley House. Ambrose said he did not want women in the house. I wonder why. As I grew older, I agreed more and more with his ideas. The big house was not very clean or tidy, but it was comfortable and we both loved it. The servants looked after us well, and the food and wine were always good. Ambrose and I often sat together after dinner drinking wine in the light of our candles. Then we sat in the library beside a big fire. The walls of the library were covered with shelves full of beautiful books.
Oh. On Sundays, we always went to church. After breakfast, the carriage took Ambrose and me to the church in the village. All the servants came to church too. On Sunday evenings, we had an early dinner. Usually, some of our neighbours would eat with us. When I was old enough, Ambrose taught me how to look after his land and his people. I was his heir. The house and the land were going to be mine when Ambrose died. But I never thought that Ambrose would die. We both expected that he would live for many years. Our days together passed in calm happiness.
So
wow.
they're very lucky.
Yes.
They're very lucky. Now, there's a word here called air.
Yes.
So we pronounce it like the air we breathe,
That's
but
right.
it's written differently. And this
Yeah.
one means that our riches, our belongings, pass down to the next person in our family or the person we want to have our belongings. So
Yes.
this is the word air, pronounced
Silent
sorry.
H. Silent H, yes. It's
So,
only
but
next
it's
of kin.
yeah, next of kin, the good one.
Or something you nominate, yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
So normally we do something called a will, W-I-L-L, a will, which means a piece of paper where we write or our lawyer writes what we want to do with our belongings. So that is a will. Normally we do a will before we die. So there is no arguments or no misunderstandings of whatever we want to do with our personal belongings. Off you go, Alan.
But sometimes changes come into people's lives that they do not expect. Things happen to us that we can do nothing about. My dear cousin Ambrose is dead. That is why I am writing this story. My cousin Rachel is dead too. And who was my cousin Rachel? You must read my story to find the answer to that question. I know who killed Rachel, but I do not know how my dear Ambrose died. Was he killed too? I shall never be able to answer that question. I shall never know the answer. Perhaps you are reading this can decide. You must be my cousin, Rachel Judge, and mine too. I, Philip Ashley, am only 25 now. Most of my life is in front of me. But the only people I shall ever love are dead. I cannot live with my thoughts any longer. I must write down everything that happened. Anything about Ambrose, I've lost the last bit. Everything about Ambrose, my cousin Rachel, and myself.
Sorry about that. I touched it when I shouldn't have done. So we have finished the first chapter. So I think we will go on to the second one. Okay, we'll go on to the second chapter.
Okay.
Ambrose and I lived in Cornwall. It is often cold and damp in winter there. Rain falls nearly every day and the sea looks rough and grey. This weather was bad for Ambrose. By the time he was 40 years old, he was walking with a stick and his hair was turning grey. His doctors told him that he must go abroad every winter to a drier country. If he did this, he would become stronger and he would live to be healthier I know, to be a healthily old man. Now, let's have a look at some words. Damp is what we feel in the air when it's cold, and it's sometimes we can feel it in our bones, no? And this is caused by the sea or living near the sea. For example, here I have 80% of humidity. And so sometimes I feel it in my arthritis. So this is an illness that doesn't like it, no? Excuse me. I was 22 when Ambrose went abroad for the third winter. I had left university and I was old enough to look after the estate by myself. This time, Ambrose was going to Italy. He wanted to see the beautiful gardens of Rome and Florence. Ambrose loved his own gardens, and everything he planted grew well there. Now he was planning to bring back many unusual plants and trees from Italy.
The evening before Ambrose left for Italy, we sat together in the library as usual. We were both smoking our pipes and our long legs stretched out in front of us. We were wearing old, comfortable clothes and the fire was burning brightly. The dogs were sleeping at our feet. We sat in silence for a while, and then Ambrose said, "I wish you were coming with me tomorrow, Philip." "Why not?" I replied quickly. "I could soon be ready." "Yes," Ambrose said, "let me go with you." Ambrose smiled. "No," he said, you can't be, we can't both be away. Somebody must look after the estate. Forgot I asked you. You are feeling well, aren't you?" I asked. "You haven't any pain?" "Of course not, Philip," Ambrose replied. "The trouble is that I love my home too much and I don't want to leave." Ambrose stood up and walked towards the window. He pulled back the heavy curtains and looked out into the darkness. "You must promise to look after the gardens for me, Philip," he said. "What do you mean?" I asked. "You'll be back here in the spring." Oh, hang on. I can't hear you. No, I can't hear you. Your microphone is switched off. Your microphone, that's it.
Yes, sorry about that. I'm saying, do you get like a sensation that Ambrose knows something is going to happen?
Yes.
And he's trying to plan everything before he leaves this time?
Seems like it.
Yeah, and also when we were reading this, Alan, it reminded me of many years ago. The retired people from the UK used to come to Spain for the winter to get away from the cold.
And the damp, moist weather. Yes.
Do you
We
remember
used to have
that?
lots of rain in Cornwall. That's what drove me away, really, and brought me to Spain. I wanted a drier climate and warmer.
I remember one year, my mother said many years ago, it was cheaper for her to stay in Malaga, which is the south of Spain, than to stay at home. So paying for a hotel in one of those, normal hotels with everything included, it was cheaper for her to stay there than to put on the heating and everything.
Oh gosh, yes.
I'm not saying now because I don't know, but I'm saying years ago. So this story brought that up about going to the warmer climate for the winter and then returning. I know people from the UK that used to stay here 6 months and then go back for 6 months.
And go back to the UK for the summer. That's right, yes.
Right. Yes, I will, Ambrose answered slowly. Take care of things while I'm away, Philip. You are very young, but I need your help. You know that. And everything I have will be yours. Suddenly, I felt afraid. Ambrose, please let me go to Italy with you, I said again. No, Philip, that's enough, Ambrose said with a smile. Go to bed. That was all. We did not discuss the matter again. Early the following morning, Ambrose left for Plymouth, our nearest big port. He was going by ship to the south of France. From there, he would travel by coach to Italy. The weeks passed slowly for me. They always did when Ambrose was away, but I had plenty to do. If I was lonely, I rode my horse into the nearest town or visited our neighbours.
The first letter from Ambrose arrived in the middle of November. He was well and happy. The journey by ship had gone well. At Christmas, Ambrose wrote to say that he had reached Florence. It was in this letter that he wrote about his cousin Rachel for the first time. He told me that our family and her family were related. Rachel's father and mother were both dead. Rachel's husband, an Italian count, had died too. She lived alone near Florence in a big house called the Villa Sangagliete. Rachel had planted the gardens of the villa herself, and they were famous for their beauty. I was glad when I read this letter. Ambrose had found a friend who loved gardens as much as he did. The winter in Europe was very bad that year, and snow covered the roads. Because of this, the next letter did not arrive until early spring. In this letter, Ambrose told me more about his cousin Rachel. She found him somewhere to stay near her villa. My cousin Rachel is a very intelligent woman. Ambrose wrote, but thank God she doesn't talk too much. Her gardens are beautiful. The weather is getting warmer and I'm spending a lot of time in them. My cousin Rachel is pleased to have an English friend, and I am giving her advice about business matters. She has very little money. Because I have helped her, my cousin Rachel has helped me find many beautiful plants. I will bring them home with me.
Right. I will ask you a question at the end. I was surprised by this letter. Ambrose had never shown any interest in a woman before, but I was glad that he was well and happy. There were a few more letters, but Ambrose did not say anything about returning to Cornwall. Then, at the end of April, I received the letter that changed my whole life. Dear boy, I don't know how to begin to tell you. My cousin Rachel and I were married 2 weeks ago. I didn't know why. I don't know why she has chosen me. I do. But we are very happy together. I love her, Philip, and I'm sure you will love her too. She's kind and good. Tell our friends about my marriage, Philip, and remember, it will never change my feelings for you. Write soon and send some word of welcome to your cousin Rachel. I could not believe it. I took the letter out in the garden and walked slowly down to the sea. I sat there and read the letter again. I felt lonely, angry, and very unhappy. I was already jealous of this woman, my cousin Rachel. I knew that my life would never be the same again. I want you to help me. Do you know the expression about the fly in the ointment or something?
Yes, put a fly in the ointment, yes. I've heard the expression. Something that's happened where it could upset things. Something not planned.
Could I use it here?
By all means.
Could I say Rachel is the fly in the ointment?
Yes, yes, because of something quite unexpected.
Right. So it came to my mind, and I thought something that I remembered years ago, because I don't use that in my normal everyday
No, well, I
language
don't
now.
normally, no, but I have heard it in the past.
Right. Now your turn, Alan.
I told all the neighbours about Ambrose's marriage, but I did not speak to anyone about my feelings. To my surprise, all our neighbours were very happy at the news. It's the best thing that could have happened. When are they coming home? People said, but I did not know. Ambrose had not written anything about when he would come back. Wow.
Our nearest friends were Nick Kendall and his daughter Louise. Nick Kendall was nearly 60 years old. He was my godfather. Now, godfather is a chosen person when you are born. In case something happens to your parents, they offer to look after you. So normally you have your two parents who choose someone who's normally close to the family. In case something unfortunate happens to them, there is someone always there to look after you, your godfather and your godmother.
It's usually until the age of 21. Beyond that, you're on your own, if you like.
Right. Excuse me. His wife was dead. Louise was a little younger than me, and people said she was pretty. We had known each other all our lives, and she was like a sister to me. The Kendalls were the first people I told about Ambrose's marriage. Nick Kendall was a lawyer. When he heard the news, he looked at me carefully. You will have to start looking for a house, Philip, he said. At first, I did not understand. What do you mean? I asked in surprise. Well, Ambrose and his wife will want to be together, Nick Kendall told me. They may have children. I'm sure Ambrose will buy you a house of your own, and you may get married yourself. There are many pretty girls in the district. He went on talking, but I did not hear what he said. I had never thought I would have to leave my home. I hated my cousin Rachel. What was she like, this woman who completely changed my life? Was she pretty or plain, old or young?
In the middle of May, I received another letter from Ambrose. He said that he and my cousin Rachel were staying in Italy for the summer. I was so happy. Thank God this woman was not going to come to the house yet. I began to enjoy life again. The summer passed and winter came. Ambrose did not return. He continued to write to me, but his letters changed. I began to feel that he was unhappy, not happy. The summer and autumn were very hot in Italy that year. Ambrose was having terrible headaches. He had never had headaches before, but said nothing about coming home. The second winter passed, and then spring. Ambrose had married for more than a year now, had been married for more than a year now. Many weeks passed, and I did not receive a letter. I began to worry. At last, a letter came in July, but it made me more worried than before. I got on my horse at once and rode over to Nick Kendall's house to show him the letter. The writing was so bad that we could hardly read it. Ambrose wrote to say that he had a terrible illness. He wrote about his fear of Italian doctors and of a man called Rinaldi. He also seemed to be afraid of his wife Rachel. These are the words of a very sick man, Nick Kendall said slowly. A man whose mind is very disturbed. You do not know this, Philip, but Ambrose's father died of tumour of the brain. In the last weeks of his life, he was sometimes like a madman. I hope that Ambrose...
Then Nick Kendall looked at me and said, I think you had better go to Italy, Philip. You must find out what is happening. I knew immediately that I had to go to Italy. I did not look forward to the long journey in a strange country. I could not speak French or Italian, but I knew I had to go. I went home and got ready to leave. Seacombe, our head servant, was going to look after the house while I was away. I did not tell him about Ambrose's illness. I was in the carriage ready to leave when a last letter arrived from Ambrose. It was very short and almost impossible to read. For God's sake, come quickly, Ambrose had written. Rachel, my torment, has won. I am dying. Come quickly, or it will be too late. I began my journey with a terrible fear in my heart. It was the 10th of July. I knew I could not reach Ambrose until August. Can you imagine? So here we see him in the carriage reading the letter that he has just received. So we have finished chapter 2. What did you think?
Very good. It's getting quite intriguing. She would obviously probably married him for his money, I would think, and she's going to probably finish him off.
Right, so we're going to get to, sorry, we have to finish now before we get cut off. Okay,
Yes.
then. So Rachel is the fly in the ointment.
Yes.
And let's see what happens in the next chapter. See you.
Okay.